Both are out of here to
Doug, you still good? You all set?
Yep, we're good to go.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to officially call this April 17th meeting of the Mount Vernon City Council to order. And the first item on the agenda is accept any agenda changes or approve the agenda.
With the attendance of the Lemmy Tenor folks, I would move that we take mayoral proclamation item H1 and move it up in the agenda to immediately after the consent agenda.
I will second that.
It's moved and seconded to make one adjustment in the agenda, moving H1 after D1. Any other questions about that? Otherwise, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to communications. Is there anyone here to address the council on any item that is not on the agenda? Otherwise, the agenda should be in the back of the room if you want to wait until that item comes up on the order.
Hey, Tom,
Yes.
you guys are very gurgly, all of you.
Okay.
Our AD guy's messing with the sound.
Yeah,
Okay,
I was adjusting volume, but
I didn't have my mic on.
no.
Yeah, and I didn't have mine on either, sorry, Deb.
We're only 3 years into this, so we're still working it out.
Well, some of us aren't quite as far along.
Fair enough,
so-
fair enough.
Tom, you have any tech staff here that can help us out?
No, fortunately not tonight.
Let us know if there's a problem any further, Deb, but
thank you.
I think we had a motion on the floor to approve the consent agenda. Have we voted
I
on
think
that?
we already did that. Yeah.
That was
No,
okay.
we approved the modified agenda.
Yeah.
Nothing on the consent
Right.
agenda.
I move to approve the consent
There
agenda.
we are. I'll second.
It's moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now go to H1, which is mayoral proclamation recognizing June 21st, 2023 as Velvet Curtain Dramatic Society Day in the city of Mount Vernon, Iowa. Mr. Stevens, do you have any preface here? You're doing a cutting for us or anything like that?
No, they were actually just saying, it's too bad it's not a musical, because then they'd all love to sing for you, but unfortunately, cuttings of a farce don't really work that well. So,
Any questions while I'm pulling up H1 here?
So,
Scroll
we've got a hard copy.
I'm not sure I had the right Okay. Item H1 is a mayoral proclamation recognizing June 21st, 2023 as Velvet Curtain Dramatic Society Day in the city of Mount Vernon, Iowa. This is a request by Mr. Stevens, and congratulations on the recognition here. And mayoral proclamations, we read them into the minutes, and I will begin with that. Whereas the International Thespian Festival will be held on the campus of Indiana University on June 19th to 23rd of 2023, and whereas the ITF will host approximately 4,500 students from 47 states and territories and 5 different countries, and whereas the Educational Theater Association announced that Mount Vernon High School's production of Lend Me a Tenor has been selected as one of just 7 high schools in the entire country to perform on the ITF main stage. And whereas while this may be the first appearance by the Mount Vernon High School on the ITF main stage, they are no stranger to the event, having performed in 2012, 2017, and 2019. And whereas Lend Me a Tenor was also selected as one of 3 main stage performances for the Iowa Thespian Festival held last November 11th and 12th, 2022 on the University of Northern Iowa campus, an honor that Mount Vernon High School has secured 4 times in the past, with Things My Mother Taught Me in 2015, Piece of My Heart in 2017, Eurydice in 2019, and Lend Me a Tenor in 2022. And whereas Lindy Tanner was written by Ken Ludwig and is presented through a special agreement with Concord Theatricals. Whereas I wish to congratulate the cast of Lindy Tanner, consisting of Lydia Benish. Want to wave when I announce your hand, announce you here. Consisting of Lydia Benish, Natalie Clark, Cyrus Johnson, Charlie Crowe, Milo Oldinger, Tyler Panos, Margaret Player, and Luke Stevens, and the set crew of J.C. Pendergrass, Megan Teague, Natalie Tiroff, and Director Tom Stevens. Sets and technical design by Brad Gates, costumes by Barb Shepley. I now, Thomas M. Weisler, by the power invested in me as mayor of Mount Vernon, with the entire citizenry of the city of Mount Vernon, Iowa, do solemnly proclaim and declare 21st day of June in the year of our Lord 2023 as Velvet Curtain Dramatic Society Day in the city of Mount Vernon. Hear, hear. Thank you very much. Congratulations. Represent Mount Vernon well, and as I'm sure you will, and another tribute to our fine arts program that's available at the high school.
Got a lapel pin with our thespian crest for each of the board members here.
I heard Beauty and the Beast was amazing, and my two
No, I'm gonna take it.
grandsons.
He's
I
not
love
here.
it. And they're all in it. That's what I figured
Have you
they
seen
were.
it? It's here on the table for you, so don't let them steal that.
So I'm gonna see it next week.
Well, in thespian tradition, break a leg.
Do you want to talk quickly about the history of Velvet Curtain? I mean, because
Guys, yeah.
Can I give you this?
it goes back quite a ways, doesn't it?
Yeah, in fact, the Velvet Curtain just celebrated our 50th anniversary as a chartered troupe a year ago in March. So it goes back for quite a few years, and it's just, I was just saying to someone the other day that I was blessed to come in and take over a turnkey program, that it was thriving, and all I had to do was just not screw things up. And hopefully, when my time comes to pass it on, then it'll be in the same condition for someone young to come in and take it on and go to even more. You know, it's all about the experiences that we can provide for the students. You know, that's always been my driving core for educational theater, is what kind of experiences can we give them, what opportunities can we give them, and how can we prepare students to go into the arts wherever that may take them the rest of their lives.
That sounds good. I take great pride in tracking on Google, it's on the internet, so it must be true, how Mount Vernon does in certain things. And the last cutting that I got was that Mount Vernon was #1 in charming small towns you have to visit in Iowa. #3 in the best places to live in Iowa. #6 with most charming, #7 most beautiful small towns in Iowa. They don't have a recognition here for the highest level of fine arts in our school district, but we would be definitely in the top 10 with that as well. I know that. So,
Absolutely.
thank you very much for representing Mount Vernon well, and good luck in Indiana, and good luck again this weekend. And I think I'm Saturday night is where my tickets are for. So see you there. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving out of item E1, public hearing for the consideration of the City of Mount Vernon fiscal year 2023-24. And we officially open the public hearing. I will do that now. If there's anybody here from the public that is here to talk about that process. It's a pleasure. Seeing and hearing no one that is here to speak to that, I will officially close the public hearing and take a motion on that, please.
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you, Deb. Moving to second is to close the public hearing on the annual budget. We'll now proceed to G1, which is the resolution to approve the City of Mount Vernon fiscal year 2023-2024 budget. We all received a separate listing from Chris about that. Chris, do you have any, and then I know Craig said he had some questions that he would talk to you about individually, but is there anything that you want to highlight on that, or do you want to pull that up, or how do you want to deal with that?
No, so the budget presentation is in a similar format, and will be on,
Microphone, Chris.
sorry, Dave. Will be on the city council website. The highlight, low light, whatever you want to call it, this year for me is the fact that we've had to raise taxes from $12.99 to $13.15. If you can flip basically the second or third last slide, that it has the property tax comparisons. For everybody this year, I did put in parentheses where we stood in relation to last year. And you'll see there's quite a big difference. Generally speaking, some of the changes that are being made at the state level as it relates to property taxes are making things a little bit interesting for cities these days. Even though we've had a significant amount of growth as far as new housing developments within the city, we actually lost 3.21% in property tax value. I know there is more than just the city levy rate when it comes to your overall property tax value, and all I can really do is speak to that city levy rate. But generally speaking, even with the levy increase, those that own a $200,000 house would see less than a $20 increase, even with that amount. So what that goes to show is that even with the additional levy amount, we're still not capturing a significant amount more in tax dollars by any means. So this was the first time since I've been here that we started having that conversation in the hole. We're about $200,000 off when we started the budget process this year, before the decision to make the increase to $13.50. A lot of that has to do with the fact that commercial and industrial get their first $150,000 worth of value now taxed as residential. Doesn't hurt the cities that have commercial values in the millions. Most of our commercial values in the thousands. So that definitely has an influence on what we're able to capture. So more good news for next year is with the housing prices, those that have gotten their property tax notifications, yes, they did an equalization. This is an every other year occurrence that the assessor's office does. It's the highest percentages I've seen in 21 years of doing this. So even though the property taxes staying fairly stable with rollback, valuations have seen some incredible growth. I mean, I've talked to people that have had $100,000 and $125,000 growth in value in their homes. The downfall of that is next year when they calculate the rollback, myself and most of my counterparts are a little bit nervous that we'll see rollback in sub 50 territory, which I haven't seen for a very long time. So we're definitely not out of the woods and we're making changes still, so we'll see how this all unfolds for next year. But thankfully we do have growth, and I'm not exactly sure what communities are doing that have.
So is there something that you attribute it's just odd that we have growth and yet lost 3+ percentages in. Is that mostly rollback or commercial assessment formula, or is
So
it
this time around, it's mainly commercial assessment, commercial industrial assessment. Keep in mind that we also lost percentages for multifamily residential, who used to be taxed as commercial and have been stair stepping back. This was the final year in which they were stair step back. Now they're at the same rollback formula as residential is. So, we don't have a substantial amount of commercial growth, so even with the new houses that are coming in, you're losing 50% of the value right off the bat. Now, a $500,000 home, even at 50% of the value, still brings in a fair amount of property tax, but compared to a $500,000 commercial structure that's paying 90%, it doesn't necessarily hold water. So, but the commercial rollback is the most significant.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions of staff regarding the budget?
Nice job on presentation, as usual. I will move to approve Resolution 4-17-2023A, approving the City of Mount Vernon fiscal year 2023-2024 annual budget.
Thank you, Stephanie. Is there a second?
Second.
I'll second.
I think Paul got in ahead of you there. Page I'd like is, the best information is page 6, the basis for the 1315. What's all involved with that, 27 cents here, 27 cents there, and, all the things that roll up to the 1315. So, got a motion on the floor, it's been approved. We move forward with that resolution, and I think this is a roll call vote. So if you are ready,
Herman,
motion.
Yes.
Turler,
Yes.
Rose,
Yes.
West,
Yes.
Motion carries. That takes us from G1, we're going to go back to F1, I believe. The third reading on an ordinance, amending traffic code enforcement procedures, Mount Vernon's municipal code. No further comments about that, I saw. Any questions of staff? Or Chief Shannon? Anything to add?
Nothing new on my end.
Ready for motion?
Yeah, with that being said, I would move approval of ordinance 3-20-2023A, amending chapter 70 of the traffic code enforcement procedures, Mount Vernon Municipal Code.
Thank you, Scott. Is there a second?
Second?
I'll
Steph. Moved and seconded to move forward with the ordinance approval for the third reading, and that is also a
Rose,
voice.
Yes.
Turler,
Yes.
West,
Yes.
Herman,
Yes.
That ordinance passes third reading and in time for about the walk, right?
Yep, hopefully.
All, okay, I'll do this, yeah.
We won't have the tickets by then, so they'll still get the cheap fines.
Staff will be happy about it at least. Gets us back to G2, vacation of Lot V, the infamous Lot V on Snowbird 5th edition to the city of Mount Vernon.
So at one time, they reserved a lot B with the thought they were unsure what they were going to do where the now Mount Vernon Sports Athletic Complex is going to be. It does have a current trail on the north side of the property. The lot sits between 570 and 440 13th Avenue Southwest. For liability purposes, it would make a lot of sense for the city to vacate this property and just sell it to the school, retaining an easement for bike trail purposes and requiring them to maintain as such. Again, that bike trail goes through their property and actually a long winding path makes its way back to property that is jointly owned by both the city and the school. By Iowa code, because the school is another taxing entity within the community, we can sell the property for $1. The school will be responsible for any legal paperwork that would need to happen to make the transfer.
School district is open to the transfer. I know we're doing trees on the extended part of the trail, that back of the stadium seating. Would trees go into this Lot B, or is that too narrow? It's still out.
Well, I think we would be trying to fit too much
Okay.
into that location. Not to rule it out for the future, but I think until everything is quite established and we know. The other thing is this is an emergency vehicle access, so
That was the one concern I had, was with the emergency vehicle access. I mean, it's not, it's paved enough for one wheel or a golf cart. Or are there plans to?
oh, there will be a drive access that goes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's kind of the reason behind this. If we were to, if it were to be a city street, for instance, we would have set requirements that they would have to match. They could put in a drive access. This will allow them entrance into their facility, and an ambulance would be capable of not only entering this location, but then making their way onto the track if they needed to.
Yep.
And that's all this is designed to do.
Or that was my one concern with it. I like turning it over to this school for what they need to do with it, so.
Planning and zoning has reviewed this and came back with a 6-0 vote recommending approval as well, I see, so that's good. Yeah. Any possible other consequences of such an action? Got a staff recommendation to move forward with this. What is the will of the council?
I'll move approval of Resolution 4-17-2023B, approving the vacation of Lot B in Stonebrook.
Thank you, Deb.
Second.
I heard Paul, second. Seconded to move forward with resolution 417-2023B. You are ready for roll call vote, Marcia?
Turler,
Yes.
West,
Yes.
Herman,
Yes.
Rose,
Yes.
Motion carries. Next step in the process is 2023C. Approve the disposal of the vacated Lot B, Stonebrook addition to the city of Mount Vernon.
I move approval of resolution 4-17-2023C. Selling the property in the amount of $1.
I'll second.
Thank you, Paul and Scott. Moved and seconded to move forward 2023C. You all understand the motion if you're ready to vote.
Rose,
Yes.
West,
Yes.
Herman,
Yes.
Turler,
Yes.
That resolution passes. Thank you. Moving on to 2023D, approving authorizing and directing East Central Iowa Council of Governments to submit application and associated documents. Funding to the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Rachel Generator Program, to the Iowa Economic Development Authority. Chris, you had some explanation about that?
Yeah, originally the city was going to take a step back and allow Cornell to submit a grant application for this particular program. However, the generator cost that would be needed for them to maintain commons and the limits that are placed on the grant application made the gap too wide. So they indicated that they were no longer going to seek the grant. The city has always planned to put a generator in at the LDC, and because we haven't started that process, it just makes a lot of sense that we at least attempt to secure some grant funding for that generator,
What is the potential for funding?
up to $100,000.
And would this be along the lines, I think when we did it at the police station, it was 250-ish?
75 for ours, I think.
275?
No, 75.
About
Oh.
75.
Okay.
So the variation in generators depends on how much of the building we are trying to operate and how many people we are trying to accommodate. So we could, with the potential grant funding, try to put a larger generator there to ensure that we could house, feed, do a number of things out of that facility. One of the issues that we had with the last level 4 storm coming through was the fact that with derecho, Cornell was not in session. And that's 1,000 plus kids that have to be taken care of. So we did luck out derecho for the 5 to 7 days that everybody was without power, that we didn't have an extra space to get people in if it's hot or get people in if it's cold. And then, of course, charging stations, things of that nature.
During the design phase of the LBC, it seemed like the generator location was gonna be kind of in the northwest corner. With possible, and then maybe I'm wrong on that, but with a possible pool down the road, if that happens, wasn't that going to be kind of in the north, that is gonna be in the northwest corner? Was it, is there still,
So the generator would be further, a little bit further away than that open grassy area, so it would be a focal point. We own all of the ground on the north side of the solar panels.
also it'd be away?
So we would try to push this as far away from the
Right.
building as possible. One, it has to be somewhat convenient to refuel during an event. And two, want to make sure that when it does kick on, it's not so loud and disrupt everything that's going on in the building.
That's better location,
Yeah.
definitely.
Well, I mean, I'm all for grant funding, so I would, unless there's further questions or concerns, I'd move approval of resolution 4-17-2023D, moving forward with ECOG, working towards a grant for the generator for the LBC.
I will second.
Thank you, Scott. Stephanie? Motion on the floor, approved, seconded, to move forward with 2023D. No further questions of staff. We're ready to vote on that. That is a roll call vote again. Marcia?
Turler,
Yes.
West,
Yes.
Rose,
Yes.
Herman,
Yes,
Motion carries. Thank you all for that. Moving to G5, 4/17/2023E, approving the preliminary plat for Stonebrook 7th Edition, Phase 2, and 10th and 11th Edition, City of Mount Vernon. Thanks for all the diagrams.
So the 7th edition and the 10th edition were really part of the original subdivision. The 11th edition prompted this conversation today in two ways. Number one, it's an addition of lots. It's an additional 10 acres directly to the west of the original study area. The second is it allows them to make some changes to their stormwater calculations. The lots on the very west edge of this Stonebrook, in the 10th edition, 29 through 41, had a significant amount of issues even with the engineering that was taking place prior to the purchase of the 10 acres. They needed the dirt on that 10 acres, I think that kind of prompted the purchase, but now that they have, it does allow them to make some modifications. They've changed some lot sizes, made them a little bit smaller in some areas, trying to entice slightly less valued homes to be built, expanding their market base to a certain extent. But there are three changes that both staff and requested and P&D concurred on lot 117 in the 7th edition. There's a trail that comes down to lot 17, and then they had decided to reduce that to a 5-foot sidewalk, and we requested that be a trail all the way into the park. That street actually dead ends into what would be Stoner Park, the 5 acres that the city already owns. And then if you look at between the 10th edition and the 11th edition lots, 36, 47, 37, 46, same thing there. We requested that trail be modified to a trail width and not a sidewalk width. And then lot 74 is not going to be a buildable lot. That is going to be necessary for a temporary turnaround. So you do not own where the streets are going to connect. You see a stub and a stub on the very west side. Doesn't make any sense to try and work around that because we want them to be 90-degree angles. So until that property decides to develop or sell, that stub will stay there. The one thing I did tell P and Z, if at some point it was ever necessary, the city could go through the condemnation process to make that connection. But I think our goal would be to allow the market to allow that to happen eventually in the future.
So when you're talking about property developing, you're talking about south of lot 74 and connecting to that road?
Correct.
Just immediately to the east there?
Yep.
Okay.
And by temporary turnaround, you were accommodating construction vehicles, is that what that's for?
Construction and emergency. So the best example I can give you is if you go out to Spring Meadow Heights right now,
Mhm.
there's rather large gravel pads at the end of each concrete,
Yeah,
and that's exactly what this will be.
okay.
Any further questions of staff with regard to approving this preliminary plat? Thanks to Lee for getting it through planning and zoning. Again, that was a 6-0 vote, with a few minor modifications, which went through.
Okay, I will move to approve resolution 4-17-2023E, approving the preliminary plat for Stonebrook 7th Edition Phase 2, the 10th edition, and 11th edition to the city of Mountain.
You, Steph.
Second.
And Scott. Moved, seconded to move forward with 4-17-2023E. That is a roll call vote on the resolution, and Marcia, if you are ready.
Herman,
Yes.
Turler,
Yes.
Rose,
Yes.
West.
Yes.
That resolution passes. Moving on to H2, mayoral proclamation. This one is recognizing Friday, April 28th as Arbor Day within the city of Mount Vernon, Iowa. And keeping to a tradition, we'll read that into the public record. Arbor Day proclamation, and whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nevada Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for planting trees. And whereas the holiday called Arbor Day is first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska. And whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world. And whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, lower our heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource giving us paper, wood for our houses, fuel for our fires, countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. Now therefore, I, Thomas M. Weisler, Mayor of the City of Mount Vernon, hereby proclaim April 28th, 2023 as Arbor Day. The City of Mount Vernon, I urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day and to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. Further, I urge all citizens to plant and care for trees, to gladden the heart, promote the well-being of this and future generations. And signed by myself on this day. Any other comments about Arbor Day? That is our last mayoral proclamation. No old business, we'll move on to motions for approval, beginning with the claims list. I think Marcia sent out a new one this afternoon. Any questions with regard to the claims list?
I'd move approval as presented.
Thank you, Paul.
Second.
Scott. Moved and seconded to approve the claims list. We're ready to vote. That's a voice vote. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Opposed? That motion carries. Second motion for this discussion and consideration of creating a Mount Vernon Fire Department Cadet Program. Council action as needed. Chief Whitlow, are you here to present? I know that give us some information.
Hopefully I had a little bit of time to look over the information that probably 2 years ago, when we were in the COVID lockdown, and trying to figure out how to make things better, we did a SWOT analysis, like sent out to all the officers of the fire department, and one of the things that came back across the board as a weakness was succession planning. So really kind of have got into the college and done quite a bit more recruiting. We've got a really good Cornell-based students in there to kind of try to exploit some help within the community some more. cadet program was always something that we had talked about, but due to not really having a clear direction from insurance and how we would kind of basically build this and shore it up, it was always something we kind of left in the back burner. Until about a year ago, we started looking into it again, had some communications with other chiefs across Iowa that are primarily departments bigger than ours, so like Nevada, Marshalltown, those areas have cadet programs, and they actually got on with insured through ICAP as well. Got on with ICAP gave the rubber stamp of approval after a bunch of back and forth discussion. Basically, we're looking to try to get into the high school and get some students that are interested in assisting with volunteer. And just, if anything else, just giving back to the community and kind of helping out on our end of things. So we worked through, there's several departments down in Washington County, areas around here that have got cadet programs. I wouldn't say they're as formal as this. So when we did this, put this together, we really wanted to make it so it was something that was going to be sustainable in the long run. We didn't want to just kind of throw something out there like, hey, yeah, let's grab a couple of these. So I guess my vision for this too, we had an application process looking for references from teachers in high school. So try to work closely with high school principals and make sure that the students know that school, family, sports, all their extracurriculars come first, and we'll get them immersed into the fire operation as much as we can, but just to give them an idea what's going on and their expectations, to make that clear as possible. So I think it'd be something in the long run. We've been in the schools for probably the last 10 years, middle school, high school, do career days, talk to incoming freshmen. This year we rated probably 130 freshmen through the fire station during their, I can't remember the term, their winter teacher or whatever. So that was really good. We had a lot of interest from that, and a lot of people asking about it. So that was good to see. So I think this, like I said, we wanted it to be sustainable and it's going to last. So I think we're to that point.
Nate, I saw there was a minimum of 24 hours of training. Is there a minimum commitment in terms of hours per year or month? I couldn't find that.
So, yeah, I think it was on page 2, just on the minimum hours that the state has required for firefighters across the state is 24 hours. So we placed that in there. I actually think that they're going to be lowering that. There's some legislation out there right now, I don't know where it's at, but they're talking about lowering that for volunteers, which is good and bad. But so we would exceed that by far anyway. So yeah, I guess the answer to your question, yeah, we'd be looking at, and that's something we try to do. We get 2 to 3 hours at least every month. And it's a lot of different work.
Just, in terms of clarity for the letter to the parents, so the parents have the expectations, that was the angle that I was coming from.
Yeah.
But I think this looks great.
Yeah, and we'll definitely, I think that's one thing that we can do long-term wise, is make sure that, those items are hit home, the expectations of the student, what they can expect from us too. So.
Well, I think it's a timely move to introduce this, especially as there's more discussion about students in high school need to broaden their scope of what is opportunity for them. Not everybody's, made to go to college. We have trades, we have important services as police and firefighting and EMT, and I think anytime you can introduce young people to one of those opportunities, it's a good thing. So thank you for bringing this forward.
Yep,
Really appreciate it.
Any other questions?
So you can make a formal motion to adopt the cadet program. The basis for it being on the agenda was to really make you aware. I do think from an insurance standpoint, it would help if we had a formula with the council.
Well, I also just think from bolstering the program, having the support of the city council's important as well. So I would move approval of, lost my place, sorry.
J2.
Yes, move approval of the Mount Vernon Fire Department Cadet Program.
I'll second.
Thank you, Paul and Stephanie. Any final questions of staff? Chief Whitlow? So voice vote, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to J3, discussion, consideration, of pay application. Number 4, the police station. Yes, thank you, Nate.
Thank you.
The only thing that I would add to this pay application number 4 is either in the amount of $124,474.25 or $120,474. There's two different numbers on this, but worst case scenario is the 4,000. They have done the work, they've supplied all of the information. It's just a matter of asking the architect which number they intended to certify for payment.
That's still on track for late October, November completion.
As long as they don't cut the electric lines again.
I bet that was a shock.
Yeah.
Well, to the guys in the
I couldn't let that out. Softball.
Steeped in dad jokes.
My sons would be very embarrassed right now.
Anything else on the pay application once you get this the right figure settled?
Should we do like a not to exceed?
Yeah, not to exceed the recommendation was for the 124.
Yeah,
We're just gonna verify it.
So if it's less, fine. All right, having said that, I would move approval of pay application number 4 in the amount of $124,474.25.
Thank you, Scott. Is there a second?
Second.
I'll second.
I'll give that to Deb, yeah. Thank you, Deb. Moving to second is move forward with the application number 4 to Septagon on the police station renovation. This is a voice vote. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. J4 is discussion and consideration of the appeal Historic Preservation Commission decision on 724 Fifth Avenue Northwest. Council action as needed. Saw some background with some minutes from at least one HBC meeting. And
You have two HBC representatives here. I'd love to speak first.
just name for the record, please. And,
Do I need to turn this on?
It's not.
Is it green?
That's right. Thanks.
Thank you.
So I am Sue Astley, and I live at 703 Fifth Avenue Northwest. I've served the city on the historic preservation for about the last 7 years, and I've been chair for about the last 3. My colleague Guy Booth is here tonight, and he puts us all to shame. He's been on the commission for 34 years. So he knows everything about historic preservation. So I'd like to report on the actions that we're asked to take at the last council meeting. On April 12th, the HPC considered the pending application for a certificate of appropriateness submitted by Shana Amundsen for property located at 724 Fifth Avenue Northwest in the Ashport Historic District. There was a resolution forwarded and seconded to deny the petition for certificate for the project. The vote was unanimous on that. The decision was based on the applicant's failure to respond to the commission's request for additional information. The request for information was issued February 6th of 2023. Now I know in your council packet, there's also a reference made to another application that we reviewed on the same day. I don't know if you would like me to speak to that at this point, or if that is not relevant to this particular consideration.
That's basically your call, I
Well, let me just say a few things about how we work in general, or how I've seen us work over the last 7 years. So the situations we face are usually pretty complex. We have our own design guidelines. As you know, were established in 1988. We have the Secretary of the Interior guidelines that we also have to interpret. They're pretty broad because they cover the whole country, and they're designed to cover a lot of different situations over a lot of time. So we have this year, and over the last year, we've added 3 design guidelines to our pack of design guidelines. That is based on what I've seen about other commissions and what they do in Iowa. So we've added several. Yeah.
When were those added?
I don't have the exact dates with me, but the most recent one was added in December of 2022. They're on our website.
Because my memory of what was available to me on the website was the Department of Interior guidelines from 1988, and then the booklet.
Yeah, the booklet was 1988, and then we added 3 guidelines
So
after that.
the booklet that I'm speaking about is the booklet that was published by Riverside. The Department of Interior was published in 1988. The booklet, to my memory, was published in 2000.
The first Secretary of the Interior guidelines were published in 1976, and there are 50 preservation briefs that were published after that that deal with very specific situations. I'm not sure when the last preservation brief was passed.
Okay, so just to be clear, what I saw available was the Department of Interior from 1988 and a Mount Vernon Historic Preservation booklet from 2000.
Okay, I'll double check our website.
And that was this year, in 2023, when this first came forward.
Okay,
So I may have been on the wrong website, just
okay.
so.
Because I put the new guidelines up, the new sets of guidelines up.
Okay, so
So they'd be available to the public.
yeah, because that may be leading to some of my confusion as I read through this.
Okay,
Thank you.
well, I'm sure we can clear that up at some point, so we can talk more about that. But part of what I want to say is that the commission has always taken the individual situation that comes before us into account. And that's what I've really liked about the commission, because every proposal that comes before us is a little bit different. It's a little bit different circumstance than the other. We follow our guidelines, but sometimes we do allow exceptions. And so the item on the February 3rd agenda was a situation where there was a 3-story building where they proposed, as the Amundsen case was only decided on lack of information. That was our only consideration. They did propose vinyl windows, and that was part of Mr. Amundsen's complaint at the last council meeting, is that we denied it based on, or we didn't deny it at that point. But this other proposal did also propose vinyl windows. We did have a policy related to substitute materials at that time that discouraged vinyl. We did approve the application for 100 First Street Southwest because there were extenuating circumstances there that made it a unique situation. It's a 3-story building. A lift will be required to put the windows in, and the property owners have looked for 3 years to find somebody who's willing to put their windows in. In addition, the building has a severe amount of deferred maintenance, such that the windows are boarded up. There's a lot of other masonry issues that have to be dealt with. And finally, the 3rd floor of the building was uninhabitable, and so these property owners didn't have the income that came from that building to allow it to be maintained. In that case, we considered the financial situation that these property owners face and the important urgency of getting this building up to a better state of affairs. And we decided that the cost of windows other than vinyl would be prohibitive for property owners. And so we approved a certificate of appropriateness. And I think we were doing what you were asking at the last council meeting, which is taking into account a number of factors. You mentioned sustainability. In this case, it was the financial ability of these property owners to actually do these improvements to the building, and also the urgency and the importance to the city. This is a building that's on a main street, a pair of main streets in town. They're very prominent in town, and having boarded up windows for an extended period was not seen to be an ideal situation. So we did make an exception in that case to our general policy of discouraging but not prohibiting vinyl. So I think we are doing what you want us to do in applying standards, but in taking into consideration factors that might be important to the city, that might be prohibitive to property owners. So that's the situation there. We did have good reasons for deciding to make an exception to a general policy of discouraging vinyl in many cases. And that's consistent. Our stand on vinyl at that point is consistent with 2/3 of the other historic districts in the state of Iowa. So out of the 12 historic districts that have a design review process, 2/3 of them disallow vinyl. So I am trying as chair to get us caught up with from where we are. I think our design booklet might be 1988. If it's not, it's the early 1990s. My goal as chair has been to get us to the point where we have modern standards that are consistent with modern understanding of historic preservation.
So there's a difference between discouraging and disallowing.
Right. We have not disallowed. In fact, we have over the years, so if someone has vinyl windows on their house and they have vinyl siding on their house, it doesn't make a lot of sense to ask them to put in something other than vinyl windows. And we have consistently done that. And so in those cases, again, we make an exception to our general preference that we not have vinyl in the historic districts.
Any other questions of Suzette at this point? Patty, you have anything to add as well, or not?
I'm not sure what the
Can
focus.
you, just for,
Sure, what do you want?
particularly for Deb's.
I'm not sure, the agenda item says discussion and consideration of an appeal of the Historic Preservation Commission. First of all, there's been no appeal that I know of. And so we want to be very forthcoming in letting you know, just as Suzette has stated, what our obligations as a certified local government is. We have to conform to the Secretary of Interior guidelines, first of all, and those guidelines have nothing to say about vinyl, except they say that you should use similar material when you're making renovations. Now, we've talked about how old those guidelines are, and there have been tremendous changes in the construction material over these years, and that's what we're trying to get up to speed with, or to help people understand that if you look at a Felco ad on TV, that's not the best thing you can do to maintain a historic structure. And so part of our whole goal is to educate people who want to own properties in historic districts. Some people may not want to have any kind of advice or limitations, and they won't buy a house in a historic district. But I think the thing that's most critical is this city made a commitment to historic preservation 36 years ago. And we want that to continue. We also know that affordable housing in Mount Vernon is basically in historic districts. And so we need to encourage people to buy this housing so we have diverse economic backgrounds. And so we don't want to make things more difficult for them, but it's important that we maintain the historic nature of the community. So, I guess I want to know from the council is, what are you asking us to do? You asked us to make a decision, and we made a decision based upon an application that was made on January 24th. That's when this application came before the commission. We immediately put it on the agenda for February 4th. We looked at it, and we found that it didn't have enough information. It didn't indicate how many windows. It didn't indicate the location of the windows. It didn't indicate the appearance of the windows. It didn't tell us who the manufacturer was or what plans. And what we have to do is make sure that the exterior buildings are not changed. That's what historic preservation is first and foremost. We don't deal with interior. And we are trying to maintain the historic nature. So if someone says, I want to put in windows, we want to know where, what kind, what's the style, do they fit within the historic nature of that building? And we never did get that. And so we immediately, after the February 4th meeting, wrote a letter saying, would you please give us more information? If he had been at the meeting on February 4th, he would have known exactly what we were looking for because we just did it with the building that Suzette has described. Assuming we were going to get some cooperation, we put that application on the agenda for, it was February 4th when we asked for more. We put it on our March 4th, March 15th, April 1st, and April 12th agenda to get some information, to have some response, to have someone come to the meeting and answer these basic questions. And nothing ever happened. As you know, in our ordinance, it says that the commission doesn't have enough information. They have a right to request the applicant to give us more information so we can make an informed decision, and that has never happened. So we did not deny the application because of a disagreement whether it's vinyl or not. Suzette has explained we approved vinyl on a number of occasions, but we declined it because we had no information on key historic elements of the exterior of the building. This could have been resolved with a 1/2 page letter to us, a copy of whatever the specs were for the windows that were being ordered so we could see them. So that's our point. We need cooperation from a person who's asking to make, if possible, change to the exterior of the structure. And we didn't get that. And we were certainly justified in saying, if we don't know what we're approving, we're not going to approve it. And that's basically where we are. So going from there, my issue is, we had a motion to approve a resolution of denial. We have forwarded that denial to the applicant. We've provided it to the city. The claimant, Mr. Amundsen, has 10 days in which to file a written notice of appeal. That has not happened as yet. So I'm not sure what the council is proposing on acting on an appeal, because to the best of my knowledge, there's no appeal pending. And we're very much in favor of having an appeal and having a full hearing on this. And I think that's beneficial
That's
to
not
the
how it
council,
works.
it's beneficial to.
That's not how it works though, Guy. That's not how it is. It is an appeal to the city council within 10 days, does not list out a situation where it's a kind of a judge and jury. It is simply an appeal to the council that they're allowed to overrule it.
Absolutely.
They can affirm, change, overrule, so on and so forth. Now, because this has been mentioned twice tonight, if the council remembers, there was zero, and I mean zero indication outside at the last meeting that this wasn't going to happen. The applicant was here, made it quite known, you were here at that same meeting. well aware of the fact that this was going to be on this agenda. He has verbally said that he wanted to appeal it twice, in that meeting and then as soon as it happened. Yes, the code does say written.
Yes, it does.
And you and I have talked about this before. I would gladly go to court over whether or not that written is going to hang up an appeal at this council. So we can kind of move on from that.
Sure, and that's, you're right, you can do
Yes.
whatever you want. I'm just trying to tell you how I read the zoning ordinance, and it's very clear. And because somebody says, well, you know, if I lose this case, I'm gonna appeal it. Fine, I've heard that many a time. But the court still says, well, let's see your notice of appeal, and then you.
And we would provide the minutes of the last meeting.
Yeah, okay.
What was the date of denial?
It was like
April
April
12th.
12th.
Yeah. And the letter went out on 14th, I sent it by certified mail.
So, you know, oh, go ahead.
Just, it strikes me, to use the best term I can that's been used before, that we're tickling where we choose on the letter of the zoning ordinance, or the historic preservation ordinance. And I appreciate greatly the work. But I also know that over time, through other councils that I've been on and when I was on mayor, or as mayor, that we also wanted a balance, as you have indicated, between the requirements, the recommendations, and the guidelines. I work with federal regulations on a daily basis. Guidelines are guidelines. Regulations are what you have to do. Ironically, in the same set of minutes that the applicant's approval or disapproval was unanimous, we have a situation where, as far as I can tell, the process wasn't followed at all, because work was completed by a contractor without a building permit, without approval by the Historic Preservation Commission, and it was determined that at that point, it's a moot point, it's already done. Yeah, we got information that make us feel good about it, and a motion was made and seconded for a certificate of no material effect was approved by, was it unanimous? Was there contention?
There was not. You're talking about our most recent meeting.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when there's one unanimous vote to disapprove, it's important to say that it's unanimous. But when there's another vote, we don't say whether it's unanimous or not. And we're talking about windows that are, I can't imagine that there are any effectively, economically affordable, and yet sustainable and improving the value of a home in terms of its level of comfort, heating, cooling, and safety that anyone would buy for a home like this. Now, would it have been nice to have additional information? Yes, I agree. but the questions that I saw in the application were answered. And I struggle when it's arbitrary to say, this house, these windows, we need all this information. These people didn't even follow the process, and it's okay.
Let me correct a couple of things.
Okay.
First, in our minutes, Guy doesn't usually say whether the vote is unanimous or not. In the certificate, I have to say who voted how. So the certificate language has to specifically include, and it did in the letter I sent to the Amundsen's. It
So your
includes
minutes
exactly-
aren't consistent.
The minutes are not consistent with the certificate, because when I send the certificate, I have
No.
to name.
Your minutes are not consistent with your minutes. Am I correct, or am I misunderstanding? In one place you say it's unanimous, and the other place you just said it was approved. I realize I'm nitpicking, but there is a point to that.
And I would add in the situation that you're talking about, we did have an application that we reviewed, and the homeowner was there. We were in a really difficult situation because there was confusion, because the window company both applied for the permit and they filled out the application for the certificate of appropriateness. And they proceeded without getting a building permit. They thought they had a building permit and they did not. So we had a situation where the windows were already in. What are we going to do? Are we going to ask them to take them out? Or what are we going to do in that situation?
There was a building in Marion that had to be moved.
And so you would support that we should ask them to take the windows out because they put them in without a building permit. And the other issue is, we don't enforce any of this. The county enforces building permits. We don't. We just try to do the best we can with the information we have and try to be fair to people who are in the town. That's all I feel I can do. I'm a human being, and I try to do the best I can.
But do you see where it feels like you're singling people out?
I know that's how Mr. Amundsen has felt. He's called me a hypocrite a number of times.
Take him out of the equation.
Yeah, well,
You've got property owners uptown, and I agree, that's an important space. You want it to be as good as it can be.
yeah,
It's a financial burden on them. Maybe they shouldn't have purchased that building
right,
if they don't have the financial wherewithal.
right.
In another case, the process wasn't followed. I agree, you're in a horrible situation. So, what route do you take? The easiest course.
That was the easiest, in fact, it was.
And yet, when we're talking about windows with, I'm really struggling with this. Because it goes, to me, it goes beyond reasonable rationale to look at this and on such a narrow view, house by house. Because frankly, what I'm reading, Mr. Amundsen should have just installed the windows. And then came and said,
Yeah, yeah.
oh, I didn't know. Or my installer didn't know.
Well, here's what I can offer. I have not written the certificate yet for the case that you're talking about because it's complicated and because I'm trying to figure out what to do with that. Who do I go to? Do I talk to the county about it or do I talk to the window company about it because they went ahead without a permit? I haven't written the certificate yet, and if the city council has direction for me about how to handle this differently than I was thinking about, we can bring it back to the commission on March 5th, when our next regular meeting is. And we
Did you
can take
vote,
a
so you
different action.
didn't vote in favor?
We voted.
Yeah.
We did
So
vote.
you can't do anything at this point. So I want to make it clear that the chair has no more authority than the rest of the commission. So it doesn't matter if you've written the certificate yet or not. If the commission's already
They
voted,
judge,
it's
yeah.
done.
So I just haven't had time to do it. I've been
So-
consumed with other things.
I have two things if I can add. This is, because this is bothersome on my side from purely trying to keep the city out of future lawsuits. Number one, there's nothing in the code or any of those standards that requires an applicant to be there. If there is additional information that you require, then that standard needs to be adopted by the commission itself, and then those are the items that have to be submitted on behalf of each applicant for a certificate of appropriateness. You can't deviate from that. You're gonna have to keep everybody fairly consistent. If these are the things that you want, so visually from, I guess if you look at it from a site plan point of view, if these are the requirements that you wish to have with each site plan, that's fine. You need to treat everybody in the same manner. So you and I have talked about this before. There is no requirement that they have to be present at the meeting.
I never told him that he had to be present.
No, but what I'm saying
I never
is,
told him that.
you know, the denial is based upon not being there, not answering or submitting the information.
That's not true, it's just not responding to the letter we sent asking for information.
Right, and he didn't tell me that he wasn't going to add any more information, or I would have brought it to vote at the next meeting. If he told me that he was not going to provide any more information, we would have voted at
So-
the next meeting.
Second point is, the commission has already opened the door when it comes to vinyl. So when you talk about going individually house to house, you've thrown that door wide open already.
So we can't
So
make
you
any
have to be
exceptions.
careful on why you're going to deny certain applications. Now, if it's a double hung window that doesn't necessarily meet the standards of the rest of the house, that's one thing. But because it's not vinyl, or it's wood and not vinyl, you've already opened that door. So, again, it's the same thing. If somebody puts in aluminum siding in a historic district and wasn't done prior to the commission, being implemented, that a commission put it in place, that door's open. Not saying that it can't be closed for certain aspects, but the fact of the matter is, we've allowed vinyl now in all of our districts, for one reason or another. So I want to be cautious in that regard.
And would you say that we have to approve every instance of vinyl, no matter what configuration of the window is?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying vinyl you can no longer stand up here and say that vinyl is discouraged and not used, and it doesn't matter anymore because you have opened that door in all of the historic districts in Mount Vernon. Now, there are aspects, like I said, window design and things like that, that you can go back and say, this isn't appropriate. I'm not saying you can't do that, but material-wise, you crack that door open. It would be no different than the council when it comes to its design standards on commercial buildings and the use of brick. We have to stay somewhat consistent, or we muddy the line of being arbitrary and capricious, and that's all zoning cases come back to those two fine words.
And Chris, I agree with what you're saying, but again, you sort of agreed with what I've said. We have to ensure the integrity of the exterior of the building. If somebody says, I'm going to put in windows like everybody else, I don't know what that means. Because each house, many houses have very unique windows, whether they're leaded glass or whether they're stained glass or whether they have different configurations. And somebody says, hey, I'm going to put in vinyl windows. Well, okay, that's not really appreciated in historic preservation, but it's not disallowed. But the responsibility we have is to preserve the historic nature of the exterior of the building. And if somebody comes in and says, well, here's this great 12-pane window that's the feature of the house, and we're going to say, no, I just like one great big piece of plate glass there. We're not going to approve it, I don't think, unless there's some really, really compelling reason to say that significant change in an historic house shouldn't happen. And so that's all we were asking for. We were asking for, show us what you're doing. And it's such a simple request, but I think personalities got a little bit involved, and so, well, no, they don't want to do anything else.
Was that specifically communicated in writing, that it's the design of the window?
I asked him for specific information such as what type of window, whether they're double hung or casement windows, where are the windows going to be located, show us some pictures of the windows, give us catalog numbers of the window company, and I got no response for 9 weeks after that.
So, but was that in writing?
Yes, yeah, yeah.
So,
I can send it to you if you like.
No, that's, I believe you.
Catch the, yes?
yeah, in his application, he did give you the phone number, quote, quote, of the company that he wanted to use. Did anybody go look at that? Did anybody go look at that company?
I can answer that. I was
was on the app.
So the phone number he gave us was a national number for Hanson Windows, and not a local number. And we didn't know, I didn't know what kind of windows he was trying to get. Are you suggesting that we should do the research?
No. I was just purely
No.
asking, did anyone look at, because Hanson's is a type of window, just like Pella is a type of window. Did anybody look at what they even offer?
I didn't look at that, partly because Mr. Amundsen earlier had said that they would be building the windows on site and that they didn't have catalog numbers or, so I didn't go there because I didn't think they'd have anything to show me because of what he had told me earlier.
Okay, and that's fair. I mean, you had other conversations. I was just merely asking because I saw that company name on the app.
No. I didn't think that that would result in anything, given what he had told me about how they
Yeah.
operate. So maybe it would be good, I mean, I've listened to what all you've said, and it sounds like some of you would like us to do things very differently than we do now. And maybe just have a blanket policy with regard to something rather than taking into account other situations. I've liked that feature of the commission since I've been on it because I think it takes into account the fact that each old home is different and each person applying for approval is different, and I like that we could do that, and I think it's important for the community. But if we need to operate differently than that to prevent lawsuits, I think the commission.
I think I need to clarify it. It's not that you can't take each individual application on its merits. However, when you open the door as it relates to materials, in this instance, in 3 applications, cost has become a factor.
Yeah.
So you can't allow cost to be a factor in one of the applications and not the others, because that carries over from one application to the next. Now, what Guy referred to as far as overall consistency of construction, taking out a 4x4 window and putting in a 2x2 window, there is definitely a conversation to be had at that point. My point is, once you've cracked open that door as far as materials and allowing certain arguments, unless economically something changes, that door is open and needs to stay that way, and just needs to be noted as part of your design guidelines to say, on this date, we allow vinyl for this particular reason. And again, if the economy goes back the other direction and now vinyl is no longer cheaper than wood, you can make a definitive point to that. But you do have to be careful taking each individual application and in ordering what can be considered arbitrary. So to a certain extent, there's a middle ground here, Suzette, and I think everybody needs to find it.
I've been searching for it.
And I would, I agree with that, and I think the thing that we keep coming back to in both the point that Guy made regarding there not being a written appeal, and that Suzette made regarding asking for more information and not receiving anything, I think there is a middle ground, and I don't see Shane anywhere near that. And I don't want to get down to the specifics on, or in personalities, but he's the one theoretically appealing without having followed the process for the appeal or responding to what I can only assume was a reasonable request for further information. And I appreciate what you're saying, Chris, about, once vinyl, materials are a very binary thing. Either it's vinyl or it's not, right? So once that's there, you got to go with that. But when to the point from the commission of asking for beyond what's the material, how many, where, what type, that doesn't seem unreasonable or onerous to me. And so I'll just be honest, I'm hesitant to approve an appeal when there's been little to no effort to give more info or to in fact appeal a decision that's already been made. So.
Well, I want to clarify to you, based upon the last meeting, did you, when you, in your certified letter to Shane, did you tell him that he had 10 days in which to appeal to
Yes.
council in writing?
Yes, yes.
So,
I quoted the ordinance in the letter.
based upon the last council meeting when Shane was here, and the meeting before that, or maybe two before that, it's a little muddy water because we stated that we would put it on the agenda. That's the reason that it's on the agenda this time, is we stated that it would be.
So, and I don't disagree that the sentiment was there for an appeal, but if we look at ordinances, a while back, we all sat here having to approve a building permit, or it wasn't even a building permit, it was what am I talking? Yeah, for the cold storage, that none of us felt good about, because we wanted to rebid it, but we couldn't because there's ordinances in place, and the sentiment of the ordinance isn't, or the sentiment of the appellant?
Person who was appealed.
Person, yes, isn't,
And that's a stake in our ordinance too.
okay, and fair enough. But I guess my point is, in a roundabout and messy way, is that we have ordinances with specific language for specific reasons. And while I think we could all agree, or most of us, that Shane announced that he was going to appeal, announcing you're going to do something and doing something are two separate issues.
Scott, it was clearly stated that the request from council was that the commission take action on the application at their April 12th meeting, and that this item would be on the agenda on the April 17th council meeting, because if the application was denied, it would come forward for appeal.
And I don't disagree with any of that. My point is, to Guy's point, it didn't come that far.
I don't think the council has the right to make an appeal on behalf of the claimant.
And if in fact, in the resolution for historic preservation, the appeal process is laid out that if you are going to appeal, that has to be done in writing. I don't think any of us have seen anything in writing. Now, he still has 5 days to do so, because it was the 12th. So I'm not saying the door is closed. My point is, if we're going to have these processes, we either have them or we don't. And
The letter did go out on 14th, although I would say, I don't think you're going to have any more information later than you have now. I think.
be that as it
I don't
may,
have anything more to say about this. I've said everything I wish to say, and so I think it would be up to you, but I will defer to my lawyer friend, who says it needs to be in writing.
That's wise.
Well, the other point that I would make, what we have denied is that application. He can file another application tomorrow, and we can go ahead. Now, he's gonna be skeptical, will he get a fair hearing? I can tell you that the commission will give him a fair hearing, but we are still going to require the basic minimum information we need to know if we are fulfilling our obligation to keep the historic presence.
And that's where I would push back to the commission to, and I think we kind of discussed this at the last meeting, but to take a hard look at the application itself, the information requested. Because it's pretty bare bones, and to Shane's credit, he did answer the questions there. Now, you know, asking for more information I think is reasonable, but if we can get an application together that asks for the information that's actually needed and skip the second step, I think that would move
We
everybody.
do now have a new application, but this situation prompted me to change our application, and we passed it maybe 2 meetings ago. It's a lot more direct in what it asks for, but guys said, we've never had an application this limited in his 34 years on the commission, so we kind of changed our application for one person, but nonetheless, I think it will be helpful to
But
properly.
still,
I think it did need to be modernized.
Absolutely.
I think
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that.
And let me say that, you know, as we started as a commission, a lot of things have changed, a lot of procedure. Suzette is the one that said we need to make this change, we need to update upgrade our application for these certificates, and that's what we have done. So I guess, you know, the council can do what they want, but I want you to know that the door is open for Mr. Helmans at any time he wants to make another application too. This doesn't prevent him from doing something in the future.
Well, I just want to say that I value your work. I appreciate the hours that you guys are putting in. I value historic preservation. Our community does. But we do have to think about the balance that I also want our citizens to improve their homes. I want them to feel like they can do that. I want them to feel like they can do that without a whole lot of difficulty. And I guess if nothing else for, you know, what's happened here with the goal to educate, I hope that this has set expectations for not only this individual, but for others on the process. And again, I appreciate that you've improved upon that. But I don't want to discourage people from making improvements or to encourage them to try to go around you. That is not why we have you.
I try my best to work with property owners. My first interaction with Shane was at the request of the zoning administrator. He had 2 jobs, 2 things he wanted to do. I went to his house and I talked to him about it, and I talked about the process for applying. I urged him several times over about a 3-month period to put in an application. So that's been a huge goal of mine, to be really encouraging of property owners to, we try to work with them, cooperatively with them about what do they want to do and what are our needs and how can we kind of meet those both together. So things get on our agenda within 2 weeks of them being submitted. And I have a conversation with them before they apply to us to try to answer their questions. I do the best I can. Sometimes it's not successful.
Thanks for what you do.
Well, and
Sort of
that's
preservation
my
law.
point, is your efforts do not go unappreciated. So I want you to know that.
Well, I've said everything I have to say, so thanks for your time.
What is the role of the council in this? No other questions? Got staff recommendation to approve the overturning of the HB decision due to standing. We've heard historic preservation. Chris has talked about the notes here. What is the role of council? Put on the
So
floor,
I'm
there's a motion.
confused at this point in time, because it sounds as if historic Preservation has gone through their process and done the things per their defined process, per our statute, and now we are in a waiting period to see if in fact it is appealed. I'm having a hard time thinking that we have any action until he either appeals or he doesn't. Maybe I'm just confused.
I think he made his intent to appeal on the record at the last council meeting. And I've explained this to Guy Booth as well. That is the reason for my recommendation. If you're requesting that the applicant fill in a 2-sentence letter stating that he is appealing the HPC Commission's decision, we can do that. The ordinance does state in writing. I think the applicant himself is probably going to be confused because he made that very clear at the last council meeting when we all acknowledged.
Well, did we mislead him by acknowledging it so that,
I would say yes. So
that's what my fear
at this
is.
point, I mean, if I go back and ask him, I don't think he's going to have any qualms about writing a 1 sentence and signing, saying he appeals in writing. As I explained to Guy today, I don't have any qualms with you taking action without having a written appeal because he made it known in a public meeting on record. Either way, you can have the discussion at this meeting or you can have the discussion at the next meeting. The intent to appeal was, if you go back and look at the meeting, was quite clear at the last meeting.
So, okay, so I'm gonna go forward then and say, if that's the recommendation, then from a council perspective, do we still have the ability to ask for the clarifications that should have been maybe in the application, such as what windows are you replacing and with what? Not the issue of vinyl, I think we've gone over that, but what windows are you replacing and what's the replacement look like? Do we still have that ability? And if we do, would that be worth us asking those questions?
I would say, by the letter of the law, no. You were dealing with an appeal of a commission. You could modify their order, but I don't necessarily know that you could take in new information and make a consideration. Historic Preservation Commission is kind of stuck in between what I would consider the Zoning Board of Adjustment and Planning and Zoning Commission. Planning and Zoning Commission makes no decision on their own. Everything comes to the City Council and is reviewed and voted on by the council. Zoning Board of Adjustment brings nothing to the City Council unless it's remanded to the council, and they can still move forward without council interference. HPC is kind of somewhere in the middle. They do get to take action on certificate of appropriateness, but they have the ability, or the applicants have the ability to appeal to City Council. So they're kind of in the middle in that regard. And I believe the code, and I can't tell you all of the items, but you can either modify, affirm, overrule HPC's decision, but taking on additional information and acting in at the behest, I would tell you then I would remand that back to HPC and have them review that specific information.
Thank you.
Again, where we're gonna go moving forward on this, what is the role of the council? Do
I would like to see an actual appeal. I mean, I get that the intent was there, but if the ordinance says it needs to be in writing, I would like, even if all we're doing is jump through the hoops with 2 sentences, I would like to see an actual appeal for us to make a motion.
So basically, the table until further action
Mhm.
is considered.
Well, no, what he's saying is, he wants to wait 5 days and see if we get an appeal.
Right. And if we don't, then the matter is settled. And if we do, then we put it on the agenda for next meeting. And there we are. Which doesn't preclude somebody else from making a motion, but that's what I would like to see.
Anybody want to make a motion one way or the other, otherwise? We'll make the contact with the applicant, is that sort of reservation?
We've completed our business with him.
City staff.
So the city staff, okay, I just want to make sure that is clarified, okay? Going once. Anybody want to make a motion one way or the other? If not, then I think what I sense is that we're going to take
I'm
it back.
trying to find my agenda, just see what it says, our options are.
It says
Ask for council.
discussion and consideration of an appeal of the HPC decision.
Council action as needed.
Well, I'll make a motion to consider the appeal.
No. Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
I will second that.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to move forward with the appeal. Is that following the recommendation of staff or asking for the appeal? I want to make sure that we know what we're voting on here.
If I didn't have so many darn files open. I'll tell you, this is,
One thing for recommending staff's suggestion that we overturn the appeal.
yes, I'm recommending what it says here in the agenda. Which again, seems to have gotten close.
My understanding from your motion was that you wanted to move forward with the appeal of their decision. Correct?
Correct.
That was my understanding, and that's why I seconded.
Move forward with the,
Per staff's recommendation.
with the staff recommendation to overturn.
The historic pres
Okay.
decision.
Are you all on that?
So
Did you follow all that,
it's
Deb?
semantics, Tom, right?
Yeah.
It's appealing the decision. We're not overturning, he wasn't suggesting overturning the appeal. He was,
I think that's exactly what he suggested.
We'll take, just wait.
Yeah,
okay,
let's give it a minute
we need
to.
clarity.
So you have 3 options based
Okay.
upon what I've heard from all of.
Clearly, this is what we need.
You have option number 1, to do nothing. This dies for a lack of motion. Option number 2, as Scott would be to make a motion and either table this or essentially have staff return to the applicant and see if he will file a formal written request, which will be on the next agenda. Or the third option is the recommendation from staff is to overturn the historic preservation decision, which you could take a motion on. This is where Guy and I will probably politely disagree. But that would be your third option. So the appeal is already
That's-
here, you don't necessarily have to.
That's my motion.
That's number 3.
To overturn the decision.
Based
not-
upon
I think Tom
staff's-
stated overturn the appeal. It's not,
Right.
it's overturning the decision. And that was what I seconded.
For the 3 different choices, from do nothing to tabling with Scott, I don't hear about staff returning it to the applicant. And then the third one, which is how Paul wants this to be interpreted.
Yes.
Follow staff, overturn HPC recommendation, and you were comfortable with that second. Okay. If we are ready to vote on that,
I would like to make one more statement.
sure.
As Chris mentioned, we disagree.
We agree to
Not in
disagree.
an acrimonious way. But I just want to highlight what I think is the important information here. The council shall consider an appeal, and following the guidelines established, whether the commission's action was patently arbitrary or capricious. All the commission has done is said, give us information so we can accurately act on your application. You're not to say that we're arbitrary and capricious because we're asking for the information we're required to have as a certified local government under all of the standards of historic preservation. And that's that's point number one. And point number two, the ordinance clearly says an appeal has to be in writing. I have never gone through a trial, and I've been through many, where I say, and listen, judge, if you don't agree with me, I'm going to appeal you. You know, what kind of law is that? That's my point on what the council.
No, I appreciate that. That's fair. So having said that, and I apologize, I'm not processing everything as well as I would like to. In the request for additional information, was it spelled out what exactly you were looking
Yes,
for? So that was in
in
writing.
detail, yes.
Before we call for a vote here, we obviously have 4 people attending, here to registering votes. And this is not a school board, I do not vote. I'm sure the understanding is that if it goes to a 2-2 vote, then the motion does not pass. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, I want to make sure that we're all on the right understanding of that. Okay. A motion on the floor has been approved and seconded to follow the staff recommendation to overturn the HPC recommendation. Is that correctly stated?
Yes.
Marcia, you got that?
Sorry, Marcia, to make you work so hard.
She's crossing.
If you're ready, Deb, all in favor of approving that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed to that motion, please say no.
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 I heard 1 to 3 there, is that correct? All right, so that we will not take up the recommendation to overturn at this point. What's the next piece of action here that is stated or implied?
Thank you all very much for your due diligence and going through all of that.
No action stated or implied on our behalf.
I will say on behalf of the HBC, we're going to reach out to Mr. Collins to see if we can continue to work on this. We don't want to walk away.
Right, this
We
is just
want
this
to-
application. Another application could be put forth
Absolutely.
with more and more relevant information and taken up and move forward.
This is obviously a tough issue, and it's hard to find a soft landing for all parties on something like this, but I think we had a pretty intense level of discussion that was still very civil and went both ways, and I guess we move forward from here.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Moving to K, reports to be received and filed, starting with police reports. Chief Shannon?
Only thing additional beyond the written report is Esteban will be graduating from the Law Enforcement Academy Friday, so I will be in Des Moines with a couple other officers attending that, and then you'll see him start in town Monday. So exciting to get that portion of this rolling.
Find find a place to live in Mount Vernon, like they have in town.
I think he's put an offer on a place just a little bit east of here.
You know, combined force,
I know,
so,
I
you
know.
know, it's in the family.
Public Works report, Elm Downs, other than pictures of trees, construction's coming along at Public Works.
Yep.
Anything to add?
I apologize for not being very detailed. There's a lot of things I could have added to some of these subjects. A little cramped for time last week. One big thing that I did not put in there because I wasn't sure of the number until today, but we did generate about $14,536.99 in GovDeal sales.
And what sales?
In stuff that we had sold from Public Works.
Gov deals.
So I was pretty happy about that. Got rid of some useless stuff and gained some space.
And 14 grand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Siders, anything to add to your Parks and Rec report?
Nothing to add,
Active
sir.
Season?
I've heard nothing but good things about, but I can look right at both of you here, about last Saturday morning. Both the pancakes were delicious, and I heard the eggs were hidden well, so. Yes.
I did lay the grass. Figured it out.
Except the one egg my daughter got and it didn't have anything in it. She was a
Hey.
little upset about that one, but,
Great learning moment.
Yeah,
Our parents.
I do have a question that's probably partly parks and part public works. I had a person ask me about the prairie grass at the dog park. That it, that they were disappointed that that had been mowed down. But is that just a temporary thing?
We usually do that once a year.
That's kind of what I thought, and I
Yeah.
thought that that was the case, but I thought I'd better check.
Yeah,
And
there has
honest-
been conversation about not keeping it. There's been problems with dogs going in and getting burrs and coming out with those kind of issues. So we haven't really fully made a decision. For, as long as the dog park's been in fruition, we've had that prairie grass up. But it seems to be, has brought some contention the last couple of years. And really last year was
So the opinion that was shared with me was, just in the event of sustainability of the grasses, and also apparently there are a lot of insect species that are out there that are helpful, and they saw it as detrimental to have them mowed down.
Yeah, we've been looking at other areas around the park where we can maybe add that instead of inside the dog park, so that's something that's still under consideration.
So the thing about those grasses is, in their natural state, periodically there's a fire. We have an ordinance that is prohibitive to that in terms of having to notify neighbors within certain distance, et cetera. Chief can speak, to the dangers of those burns. In lieu of that, one of the ways of maintaining that type of grass is periodically you chop it down and allow it to grow. So, again, it comes, one person's, treasures another person's trash. And, just because it's done once doesn't mean it won't, be back. And
Right.
frankly, I am a fan of periodically taking it down because you then hopefully regenerate some of those things. It spreads the seeds, all of that stuff that would normally happen in nature.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with it being periodically done either.
Yeah.
I just wanted to see if that was actually the case. So, okay, thank you.
Has there been talk of a middle ground and maybe mowing some paths through it instead of either
Our
yes or
goal
no?
is to make it as least amount of maintenance as possible for staff.
Fair enough.
So, when you get into the path talking, you're talking about how wide. oh,
Right,
it's not
now you got a
wide
different
enough,
mower
it's
that you
not
need to get out
enough,
there.
Get a mower in there. So that creates, all other issues. So But you're right, we have periodically chopped that down.
Yep.
It used to be maybe every other year, so, we just decided it was time to let that reproduce a little bit for this season, so.
Well, and I don't know, I'd probably speak for Matt here too, but we'll do whatever makes everybody happy, but whose happiness are we trying to
I was gonna
achieve?
say, let's not shoot for that.
Yeah, because there's gonna be,
So-
there's people
Well-
that are gonna say, well, I wish it was cut down all the time. There's gonna be those that say, no, I like it because my dog loves to run through it.
Sounds to me like there doesn't need to be a change to what you've been doing, but I just wanted to raise the question.
Yeah.
Yes, it will probably be cut more often than it had been in the past, and the reason for that really goes back to the premise for the dog park versus the premise for natural flower vegetation. So, they also harbor noxious weeds, and our way to control that is either by burning or mowing them down. I have a dog that thoroughly loves to run through that and would like to have a place to go, but I also recognize that it tends to harbor disease and other things that are detrimental to certain animals. So it's probably, I don't want to over-exaggerate, maybe 3-to-1, 4-to-1 in favor of not having the grasses so tall versus somebody that would like to have the grasses so tall. So going back to Eldon's comment, we will probably continue to mow that and keep that at a fairly low level. And continue to search for places where we could look at introducing natural vegetation in places that make a little bit more sense than the dog park itself.
Anything else from Matt? Coach Goodlove, Chief Goodlove, your report out.
I don't have anything to add.
Your turn.
I actually have one thing, I spoke with Chris, or actually Marshall, a while back. Equipment levy is gonna be out on the ballot again this fall, so to put a plug in for that. I'll put a document together, but the amount of money that we've saved by having money readily available in that account is probably in the hundreds of thousands of dollars between air pack savings. We've been able to prepay for apparatus. That alone, I think, was almost $80,000 on the last 3 vehicles we bought. So it's not an added or new tax. It's something that everybody's already all paying. So just to start the discussion of that, that's something that's it's been a tremendous benefit for us. It'd be very, very difficult to have that kind of cost savings or having to go out and fund, however the finances would have to be acquired. So other than that, just the annual report is pretty self-explanatory. Call volume's going up for everybody. Town's growing. So it's we're very, very fortunate for the amount of members that we have on, the dedication that we have is huge. So just trying to keep all those people happy as a full-time staff. So
Hopefully we can grow membership with the Canucks.
yeah, I think that's the future is definitely bright for us. We've got very broad demographic of members on, which helps decision making top to bottom. So that's huge for us. Equipment wise, like I said, we're seeing very well. No real anomalies, I guess, for the past year in our operation or function. So it's just appreciate the support and the amount of effort for our volunteers.
Thanks for a heads up on the tax, because that's something we can help.
Yeah, and I think this will be, this might be going on for this, I think the second one, so this will be year 20 to 30 that this is. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Congratulations on 1,500 at your pancake breakfast.
Yeah, that was the number, it was,
1,500 people?
Yeah, 1539 was the final number.
was that a record?
They were gonna look up tonight, I couldn't remember what the exact number was from last year, but I think we were up about 200 people from last year, so continue to grow. We haven't met our saturation point yet, but
It seems to be self-funded.
It was-
And you left here. You keep running over pancake breakfast.
we might have to start going to twice a year.
It's always great to see that support.
Well, and I did really appreciate the detail in your report, from the
Very professional.
It's, right, there's tables and whatnot, but just like the different incidents, you know, you forget the varied situations that you guys get asked to go deal with. So.
Yeah, people hear fire department,
Right.
think fire.
Yeah, it's fires or it's cats and trees, like that's all you
You know, together too, it was interesting, if you look at the call volume too, so, you know, all our members are from different walks of life, and I think it was just right around 40% of our calls are from like 10 o'clock till 7 a.m. in the morning, so people, you know, that means a lot, it speaks a lot for what we have for dedication, of people want to get up over and go on calls.
They might do it begrudgingly.
They're not always smiling when they come in.
My radio.
but they still do it.
Thanks for all the staff reports. Going to item L, the goal setting. Chris and I had some discussions about that it was time to do this process again. I think it's been valuable in the past, and we kind of set out maybe a July date, trying to do something like that. Got a couple choices this time with Pat Callahan, who has done it for us at least twice that I know of, and another choice that Chris is aware of, Elizabeth Hansen from the Nevada Windsor Heights, recently retiree. I don't know if do you want input on who to pick, or do you want approval of the
A
process?
couple things. Pat has done the last two, and his process is sound. I mean, he's been doing this for a number of years, so I have nothing against it. Elizabeth is coming in probably within the last 2 to 3 years of kind of going out on her own in this. They offer a slightly different product from one another. So they can each do a 1 day, and it's going to be in, somewhere between $1,300 and probably $1,700. Elizabeth offers a 2-day where she does come in an additional day and spend time with staff outside of just filling in the questionnaires. So really, my question was, did you want to steer in a different direction? Do you want to try someone new? Do you want to try the 2-day? It's going to be about $3,200 versus the $1,300 if we do a 2-day scenario. The only thing that I would say, and thank you to the council and my staff for this, but we've been very successful in completing a number of your goals over the course of the last 6 years by setting these out in writing. Seemingly we try to keep moving that needle, and we do, and then my staff looks at me like, are you going to try this again? And the answer is yes, so we're going to do it.
And now you're fully staffed.
Do it again, but really that's what I was kind of seeking is one, would you like new blood? They both bring an energy, they're both well respected in the field, so I don't have any qualms about going in either direction. Like I said, Elizabeth offers something that I hadn't seen quite before, where she offers kind of a 2-day program. She comes in and spends the day with staff and council outside of council meeting, and then going through the process. So, but it's more expensive. So really, that was kind of where I'm at as it relates to goal setting. We're not going to do this until after the start of the next fiscal year for budgeting purposes, so I don't need any communication tonight, but I just wanted to kind of get that in front of you and say, which direction would you like us to potentially look, and just let us know.
I'll just say right here, I like the idea of the 2-day with her speaking with staff, because I think there's a lot to be said about capacity when you start, putting these goals in front on pieces on paper. And having, the person that's conducting it have some knowledge of that, of the roles, that everyone plays, I think would be helpful.
And I said it a little tongue in cheek, but you are fully staffed now, I think
You better knock on wood.
getting everybody, just giving not only council, but also all of staff the opportunity to, have those conversations. I think it's at least worth looking at, whether, if that proposal makes sense to us, great. If
It sounds like it's not thousands of dollars more, it's
Hats
$400.
and
No,
off.
and it's, number one, it's your goals, so I wanna make sure that you're comfortable with whoever, you're utilizing. I have nothing, like I said, I've known both of these individuals for a number of years, and they're both really good at what they do. So, I don't have a recommendation for you in regard, to just like, taking what's said when you're like, better you never admit it out public, but, they're both really good, they both bring in energy. Ultimately, like I said, this kind of sets the pathway for staff for the next couple of years based upon what consensus you come to. And so, if you'd like, I can send both proposals out to you so you can just kind of review and see what they are. But I just wanted to let you know that this year, I had originally told you that Pat Callahan was no longer doing it, and that's not necessarily, he's taken a step back, but he's not, he hasn't discontinued altogether. So,
I think that would be beneficial,
Yeah.
just to give us an idea of what we're looking at.
yeah, I can, like I said, I can send these to you and let you kind of review it. I just want to make sure that you have the options in front of you.
Council, think about that goal setting, what you want, who, and when and so on. Reports, mayor's report, just mentioned 3 things. City cleanup is April 29th. If you're interested in that morning, 8 to 1, I believe it is. Second thing, involved emergency management a lot lately. Attended a one-day meet mayors session in Des Moines last Saturday, and a Zoom call tomorrow night with Glenn County Glenn County Emergency Management. So I'm learning a lot there. And my morning with the mayor, compliments around, a little education about the trains, chemicals, things that came up with the accidents there, and a lot about the pool study, communication there. Probably two things to act on maybe is the entrance to town across from the cemetery, that dirt pile, if you will, as our entrance to town, what we should be doing with that. And the second thing was learn a little bit about party line sewers. I didn't know there was such a thing, but there might be some opportunities for us in the area of party line sewers.
Sounds like the worst party ever.
I gotta ask you.
Usually for staff it is.
So, now it's, somebody's got to fill
I
me
knew
in
there
on
was
that
a
one.
joke there.
This topic surfaces fairly regularly.
Pardon?
Party line sewers, it is a thing.
Well, obviously, I wasn't aware of it, but
It's not as frequent in Mount Vernon, to be honest with you, as it is in a number of other cities, but yes, we still have a few.
that was my mayor's report. Any council reports or committee reports?
The only thing I would highlight, saw it in the paper with the bulky item pickup. Curbside this year, May 1 through 5. Stuff needs to be out by 6 a.m. on that Monday. And as they go through town, once they go through your neighborhood, that's that. So get your stuff out there. There's,
Are the quadrants defined?
No, everybody has to have it out,
Just get it out.
Okay.
because
A1.
they're very firm on this.
Okay.
That they drive by, they're not going to believe very many people that said, I had my stuff out and I missed it. Because that happens to them a lot, but they're saying, have it out on that Monday, and they're just gonna start, and they will make a continuous
Do
loop,
they,
will not go back.
do they use the same trucks? Or
No, so, because this is curbside, they will have additional staff that will be here and it's really, I think there's 2 bulky items. There is a flyer at City Hall, there's a flyer on our website, and was a flyer in the paper?
Yep, and there was information on the
Yeah.
side.
So, what you can and cannot put out for that period. The only other thing that I would say as it relates to that item is we are not going to have a city hazardous household chemical drop-off site. It becomes extremely complicated, as does the metal collection. There are locations that you can take that.
I mean, solid waste will take a lot of that stuff.
Correct.
So, yep. But yeah, May 1. Clean fun.
Any other items to share? If not, we'll consider this meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.